So today we're going to be replacing the radiator on a 2002 Chrysler Town and Country. Step 1 is going to be taking the bumper off. On both sides of the vehicle, inside the wheel well, you'll see 2 Phillips screws. On each side of the vehicle, inside the wheel well, you'll see this little notch right here. Up at the top of this notch, there's an 8mm bolt. Along the bottom of the bumper, you'll find 10 plastic clips connecting the bumper to the splash guard. You can take these clips loose with either a flathead screwdriver or a clip tool, simply by running your flathead or clip tool underneath the small section, prying it out, and then prying the whole clip out. On each side of the bumper, right beside the headlight, you'll find a 10mm bolt and another clip. On each side of the bumper, there's one nut holding on the bumper, right here. To get to this, we have to take the headlight out. To take the headlight out, there are 3 8mm bolts. You can simply set the headlight up here for the moment. To take the headlight loose so you can get it out of your way, there are 2 pieces that you need to take loose. There is a lock right here. You can use a flathead screwdriver to pry out till you hear it click. And then you simply press down right here, slide it out. On this one, we're going to use our screwdriver to pry up slightly. You got to be careful because these are made of plastic. To kind of pry this little piece up until it slides off like that. You can see how that kind of works. You're just kind of slightly prying up on these to get it to slide over that. And now we'll just set this out of the way. The nut is located right here, and it's an 8mm. If the grill had not been damaged, it would have come out in one piece. We will be reattaching that grill before we put it on. Now we're going to take the impact bar loose. It's also called the reinforcement bar and the bumper reinforcer. It's the metal piece that actually keeps you from getting hurt in an accident. Before we take the impact bar completely loose, we need to disconnect this connection right here. So we'll take our flathead screwdriver, loosen up this little red plastic piece, that's the lock. Push this part down and wiggle it loose. There are 2 nuts that hold the impact bar in place on each side. At the bottom of your air conditioning condenser, you'll see a sensor. We're going to go ahead and take that loose. And then it's set on a Z bracket. So it's this way, it goes in, and then it goes down. There's a 10mm bolt on the bottom here, and we're just going to leave this all attached. To give us a little bit more room to work, we're going to take the radiator support off. You don't have to do this part, but it will make it a little bit easier to work. Before we take the radiator support off, we will be taking the hood latch off, as well as the 2 brackets that hold the radiator in place. Alright, first we're going to take the hood latch loose. But before we loosen that, be sure and put a mark around the outside of your hood latch, because these are adjustable. So that way you can put it back in the exact same place it was. To take it loose, there are 2 10mm bolts. The hood latch cable is also connected. So we're going to go ahead and take our clip tool, slide underneath here, and slowly work them out. On each side of the radiator there's a bracket that's attached to our radiator support, held on by one 10mm bolt. The radiator support is held on by two 13mm bolts on each side. Before we start taking anything loose from the actual radiator, be sure of two things. The first being that the vehicle has had sufficient time to cool off so there's no pressure on the radiator. And the second being that you drain all the fluid remaining in the radiator using the drain plug on the bottom right hand side. Now we're going to take the fans loose, but before we take the bolt that holds it on, we need to disconnect the wire right down here. It has that same red plastic lock on it, so we'll push that with our screwdriver and then go ahead and take that loose. I'm going to do this off camera since I'll just block the shot anyway. Once you've taken your wire loose, there's one 10mm bolt on the top that holds this in place. Once you take the bolt loose, simply slide straight up. Now that your radiator is completely empty, we can start taking the hoses loose from it. We'll start with the overflow hose. Now we'll take the upper radiator hose loose. They have special tools specifically for this, but I normally use vice grips because it works just as well. You may have to wiggle this loose a little bit. The bottom hose is located on the same side as your radiator cap, all the way at the bottom. I went ahead and took it loose off camera because I just blocked the shot anyway. But it's the same process as taking the top one loose. Alright, now we're going to take this little rubber flap off so we can put it on our new radiator. It's connected by 1, 2, 3 little plastic clips, and this little clip right here is what was holding our overflow line in place. So we'll take our clip tool. I may just run it underneath here to make it a little easier. Yeah. You can run it underneath your rubber piece here and just kind of pry it up. Alright, we'll just set this to the side. Since I don't have the equipment to recharge the air conditioning system, we're going to leave the condenser connected. Instead, we're going to take it loose from the brackets on each side of the radiator. Alright, so there's a lot of connections on this side of the bracket. Right here is our high and low side for our air conditioning condenser. These two bolts right here are the ones attaching our condenser to the bracket. These two bolts here are the ones connecting our transmission cooler to the bracket. And this one bolt right here is what's connecting both of these pieces and the bracket to our radiator. So if you don't have any other issues other than your radiator, you could just take this bolt loose on each side, pick it up out of the grommets here on the bottom, so just lift straight up, pull it a little bit out of the way, just enough so you can get your radiator out and put your new one in. In my case, the condenser got smashed in on the top part, which is what caused the leak on the radiator. So I need to take all this stuff apart and try and straighten out the condenser without messing it up. You got to do it very gently, but you can straighten it out a little bit just to avoid messing up your new radiator, which is what I'm going to try and do. So we're going to be taking all this apart except these because we don't have the setup to recharge our air conditioning system. On the opposite side, you have pretty well the same setup, except you have your transmission cooler in and out, basically. So you can take as much or as little of this apart as you would like to give you enough room to replace your radiator. Alright, so I went ahead and straightened the air conditioner condenser and the transmission cooler off camera. If you're wondering how I did that, I didn't show it, but I used two 2x4s and a couple of clamps to slowly straighten it out without messing anything up. So just in case you have the same issue like I did, I'm not going to show you how I did it, but that's how I did it. Alright, now that everything's been detached from the old radiator, we can just pull the old radiator out and start putting the new one in. Alright guys, so first we're going to attach these two black pieces here. So we've got, basically it's got threads on the top up here, and on the bottom that's where it's going to help to clip onto our radiator. So we're going to put the part with the threads facing down while your radiator's sitting like this, and just snap them in. Just like that. These rubber pieces right here, this is what it's going to sit on in your frame, so we'll just go ahead and slide them into place. They look like this. You want to make sure this part's facing down. Alright guys, so as you see we have this little metal piece here. It looks kind of like an S. So there's a tight spot and a wide spot. That tight spot is going to be going over this with your wide end sticking up, so that way your fans can sit on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it on here, and you can't really just put it on by hand very easily. They're really tight. So what I did is I got a pair of vice grips, and I just worked one side at a time. Just kind of put it on here and on the back. You need to be very careful not to damage your new radiator. Just slid on one side like that. Alright, did the same thing to the other side. Alright, so those are in there really secure, and that's where our fans, the bottom of our fans, are going to set in. Alright guys, now that we have our new radiator in place, we can essentially do the exact opposite to put it all back together. Now it's time to fill the cooling system with a 50-50 antifreeze mix. Be sure to consult your owner's manual to know what type and how much you need to add. First, fill the reservoir, but make sure you keep it below the max fill line. Next, you're going to fill the radiator up to the base of the filler neck. Now you're going to start and let it idle. It's going to help to purge the air in the system. A good rule of thumb is to let the fans run at least twice. You're going to add any antifreeze as needed. And then once all that's done, replace the cap and run it one more time. Check for leaks everywhere and you should be good to go. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.